No, I've processed about 380 tons into cups.
380 tons of cups.
Well, I've been making pottery since 1966 and about 10 tons a year. But I had to go play Army for a while.
So you did this before you did an Army stint?
No, I actually learned in the Army.
Oh.
I flunked it at South Dakota State University. I got started doing exactly what you're doing. I had a film production class and I had to do an animation, and I was working 70, 80 hours a week painting billboards in the sign business. And so I went down to the ceramics lab and single framed a potter making little bottles and vases. And it looked like she was having fun. No, it keeps my hands soft. I get blisters if I pick up a hoe or a rake. But what I'm making here is a TIG. It's spelled T-Y-G. A lot of poor folks in Europe only had one cup for the whole family, so they would pass the cup.
Oh, so that handles on
So it had handles on all sides. And to heat a beverage, poor folks couldn't afford a teapot, so they would pull an iron out of the fire and shove in their beverage to make it hot. And they called it a mulling iron. Yeah. Well, yeah, clay is called clay because it's little flat-shaped particles. They're flat surfaces on the particles, so you get water between two flat surfaces, there's a suction. It'll slip back and forth, but it won't pull apart. And that's why clay is plastic. You're standing on clay. It's all over the Earth's surface.
Well, there's many different types.
But, well, it all comes from different rocks. When mountains decay over time, the water seeps into the particle or into cracks in the stone, and it's snow when it's cold, and then it warms up and it liquefies, it gets down in the crack, and then it freezes again and it pops off the flat flakes. And they wash down in mountains and streams. So working it on a wheel is kind of like getting stuck in the mud. Your tires spin and you can't get any traction. So what I do is I pretend there's a little hole in there. I'm going to push all that clay through the hole and not let any of it escape. So that's called centering. Where you take all the flop and wobble out of it. Okay, the next step is you open it up. I'm going to just stick my thumb down in there. And I've created a wall. And I can use my fingers like little pairs of pliers to take a bite into it and raise it up.
Just like magic.
Yeah, that's what always intrigued me. It still does today, I guess.
Because the mud is actually flowing.
Well, what's happening is these little particles are moving around and sliding. You have to keep the surface damp or wet because otherwise it'll rip apart, kind of like when your car engine runs out of oil, a crankshaft comes out the side of the motor,
How about you talk about your device? What do you call your spinner?
Well, this is called a treadle wheel. It was developed about 1400 by the Germans on the Rhine Valley. Prior to that, they used kick wheels, which had a heavy flywheel that you would kick around. The kick wheel's about, 3,000, 4,000 years old. Developed in the Middle East and in the Orient. The treadle wheel works like...
1 foot power?
Yeah, one. Well, it's kind of like if you look at a steam engine, you have a shaft in the center of a wheel, but then on the outside you have a pivot point that goes away and comes back and goes away and comes back, and the piston pushes that around. Well, it's the same thing that powers the potter's wheel. Now, if I put pressure on the inside, it expands, just kind of like blowing up air in a balloon. If I put pressure on the outside, it compresses. didn't. It's like kind of like bread dough. You have to knead it because when you mix bread dough, you mix soft, wet stuff with dry stuff, and you have to make a uniform consistency out of it. And so I didn't knead this dough like I should, so I got problems with it. But that's okay. You're only limited by your imagination. You know, today, your cell phone works on clay. The tiles that protect the heat shield on a space shuttle. I mean, you can get degrees in ceramic engineering. So it's a very versatile medium where you can just make cups and bowls and frogs and turtles out of it.
So you could make tiles if you wanted to.
I could make tiles. Tiles you have to have a kind of a special clay for that with a lot of filler material to cut back the shrinkage, because tiles want to shrink. This clay is going to shrink 15 to 20% in the process between when it's made and when it dries. And when it's fired, it shrinks another 5 or 10%. I'm just making the same kind of little bottle that I told you.
Be whatever you want to put in.
Yeah, well, this
Made many ashrams?
I actually have 2 or 3 on my order board. Just finished one with.
I have to order get some for my family. I think I want to be whole.
I'd make some guy named Snake, who used to come here, ordered 3 of them for his ex-wives that had rattlesnake handles. I'm sitting on one at home that's covered with corn. The guy was a corn breeder. Then I got to make another one that I have to do when I get home that has, what has it got? He was a house builder, so I got to have saws and hammers and houses and stuff on it. Clay has been used to make pottery. The oldest I've found is 9,000 years ago in Japan. Not the Japanese that live there today, but the cultures that used to live there before the Chinese invaded China, or invaded Japan. Yeah, they were actually more of a what's now known as Polynesian. The Polynesian culture. There's a lot less of it today.
So you made Dakota Indian chess sets.
And then I made a Washington and Cornwallis. And made a couple of Norseman sets with Vikings against the swordsmen.
So whatever your imagination.
You can't sell the sets without a board.
Yeah, that's
and
tougher.
I didn't have any chessboards, but most of the people that bought the sets had a fancy board and little plastic chessmen.
Yeah, that's no fun.
So, but you can't sell the set without a board to show that it.
Yeah.
And then
it's always something, isn't it?
I had one in a gallery, and the people were picking it up, so they glued all the pieces to the board. That was back when sign painting, you had a brush and a box of paint, and you climbed up the ladder, and
wow.
It's a little testy when it's 30 below zero and the wind's blowing. And